All right. Hello to anyone who is watching. I don't know what the quality of this stream is. I don't know how well you can hear me. Um, this is a test stream for setting up. Um, this is a test stream for the Canis Society. Uh, we are, standing by. Okay, we've got someone in the chat. Hey, if you're in the chat, can you hear me? Is there audio coming through? Slight echo. All right. Let me find the source of the echo. All right, what about now? Okay, excellent. Well, if it's just a slight echo, I think we'll press on. This being a test stream and all. So for those of you who are regular viewers of the Canis live streams, I am from the Hidebound Convivium channel. Me and Andrew from the Canis Society server, we are the co-runners of the Canis's efforts on YouTube and primarily on YouTube. Although I think we're looking to diversify and go out into uh, other potential streaming sources. Let's see. Is the echo particularly bad or is it bearable? Because I'm not quite sure what's causing it or how to fix it. I'm gonna go ahead and put the live stream link. Okay, it's bearable. I'm gonna go ahead and put the live stream link in the Canis chat so people can look at it. Like I said, this is not a this is not a particularly yes, okay. All questions will be answered. Okay, and Johnson's not hearing an echo. All right. So yes, all questions will be answered about previous streams, about what the streams are looking like going forward, why we've changed hosts, why we've reorganized things. Okay, so the echo's gone. That's good. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and get right into that. So as you may have noticed, I am not Weird Little Bro. Weird Little Bro was asked to step down in some capacity as the sort of head of the live stream division of Canis, although I suspect that he will be back with us shortly in some kind of role. But the duty was split between myself and Andrew, otherwise known as Tola Lege, or whatever his Discord handle happens to be at the time. But it was split between the two of us, and really the reason for the change of leadership is not so much anything wrong with Weird Little Bro or the previous approach. It was more along the lines of we had a different idea of what we wanted to do with Canis Live, with our with our messaging online, so to speak. So, the previous Tradcasts, which I don't believe are down, or, well, I think they may be down on the channel. I'm not sure. I'll have to double check. But, the previous streams were sort of, you know, they were current events focused, news focused, and that's not really the approach that we wanted to have with Canis Live. Really, the thing, and I'm just calling it that. I don't think we finalized a name for the live stream. So, what we wanted to do was move in a different direction with our presence on YouTube, and then as I alluded to previously, I think we're looking to spreading out to other platforms, perhaps D Live or whatever happens to be big in the next few months. Um, so what we wanted to do is we wanted there to be a change in tone. Like I said, we had been covering sort of current events kind of things, and we want to have the live streams be more academic and cultural in focus. So myself and Andrew, we've been talking about this quite a bit recently. Okay, yeah, yeah. Yes, myself and Andrew, we've talked about this a lot recently, and what we really want to do is I think the idea that I floated was to do a series of videos on on the transcendentals, on truth, goodness, beauty, um, and to sort of structure a set of readings around that. So the idea um, for the live streams is sort of to have me and Andrew and probably some guests be able to read a text and then be able to have a discussion concerning the text for about 2 hours. This stream is not going to run 2 hours. It should run less than an hour because, like I said, this is just a test stream, just to put my machine through its paces and to sort of explain to everyone what's been going on. So that is the future format. It's going to be more highbrow, more intellectual. Although I do believe our forthcoming episode, sort of the first episode of the new Canis live stream proper, Andrew wants to do over Strive and problems with pornography addiction. So when I say highbrow and academic, what I mean to say is that we're trying to get above the regular news cycle to talk about things that are of a more perennial interest or concern. So that's really what we're talking about. Um, and then in addition to these live streams, yeah, that is true, Kai. I think talking about current events is a way to get banned more easily. That's true. Um, but in addition to that, that's going to be pretty much bi-weekly. That's our plan for these live streams. Uh, but we also want to do sort of a parallel thing on this channel, or it may end up going on the Canis Society Codex channel, I believe is what it's called now, which you should subscribe to if you haven't already subscribed. Um, and we're looking to put book talks on that one. So specifically, reading a book and then having a roundtable discussion about the book, which, this live stream will end up most of the time taking the form of a panel discussion or a roundtable discussion, but we also want to have something that's like more literary focused. So the idea was to be able to, read a book and be able to separate out the reading to make its own audiobook, and then to be able to record the sessions where people are talking about the selection in the book and be able to publish that separately. Because, Canis does have this literary and sort of academic focus. It's not really a social club, so to speak, but we're all about sort of political activism, sort of spiritual development, and sort of academic work. We're looking to produce intellectual content that will be the basis of a future right wing movement. And so we sort of wanted all of our media to reflect that. And that is one of the reasons why we've had a change of pace in regards to our live streams and those policies. But other than that, if you're not somebody who is on the Canis Society Discord server, if you don't cover, if you're not, up to date on these kinds of things. Dave is currently working on getting our Constitution finished up. Um, I mean, if you are an admin or mod on that server, I believe you, excuse me, should have privileges to view the Constitution and should probably be proposing edits and things like that. Once we have the Constitution and sort of our mission statement, and sort of general um, not legal framework, but sort of written framework down for our organization, then we can do a little bit more in terms of activity, in terms of recruitment, in terms of all kinds of things. And like I said, so myself and Andrew, we're the co-managers of Canis's, um, online YouTube presence, and so more and more people are probably going to be promoted into leadership positions as they can be integrated. Let's see. Yes, and I think before I bring Politarch on, because he wanted to give a little bit of, I think he wanted to talk about the Knights of Columbus and things that young Catholic men can do to get involved, like in meat space, on the ground in their local communities. So I'm going to bring him on in a minute. Let me just make sure there's not anything else that I wanted to cover. I see I've covered the whole point of the live streams and our shift in focus, and I do want to stress that Weird Little Bro was not he was not punished. He didn't necessarily do anything wrong. We just decided to go in a different direction uh, for our media presence on YouTube, and so that was sort of the rationale behind that. Um, but let me see if I can't get Politarch on, and then I think I'll let him talk for a bit, and then I see no reason why we couldn't just close out the stream a little bit early. I just wanted to make sure that I'm not completely terrible at using OBS, and I can in fact run a live stream, and I believe that I have satisfactorily uh, answered that question for myself. So let me see if I can't get him on. So let's see. I just figured something like that. So talking about the Knights of Columbus or something like that would be the perfect kind of thing that would be good for a test stream like this, where we don't really have much to talk about. We Um, don't really have a set agenda. Yes, that is true, Living Being. Just I did just want to point out, even though I am bringing Politarch on to talk about, he specifically wanted to talk about the Knights of Columbus. Canis Society is not an explicitly Catholic, an explicitly Catholic social group, but it is committed to the preservation and perpetuation of Christian values and cultures more broadly. I believe Politarch is with me. Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
All right.
I was just letting you finish out there before I jumped in or anything like that.
Okay, excellent. Let me make sure. Let's see. If you're in the live chat, can you hear him all right? Is there lots of echoing? Does it sound terrible? Is it, I don't want to ear rape you guys on stream. So if I could just get some assurance that the audio setup is not terrible, I think we'll proceed. Well, I'm not seeing any
I'm
immediate.
not.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any immediate assurance, so I'm gonna assume that everything is a-okay. So how are you doing, Politarch?
Just another day, right?
All right.
Um, yeah. What did you? I was interested in a lot of the changes because a lot of the guys in Canis, at least from my perspective, have been a little bit worried that the organization's been starting to stagnate. But I know that there's been shakeups with the leadership, and that we're trying to become more academic, as you stated. So that's interesting to have that all sort of laid out and such. So are we just to confirm from our perspective? If you don't know, I'm with the DC chapter. So um,
Excellent.
are we moving from say a more social environment uh, to a sort of academic environment?
No, I,
Like,
I, I wouldn't say so. What I think is important to do is sort of there is in some sense a natural bifurcation between Canis's online activities and its on the ground activities, and its role as a social institution is going to be most prominent in its physical chapters, like DC, where Canis can physically bring people together. Now, obviously, our Discord server has an element of that, but people sitting in the Discord server, we don't actually want to be encouraging people to spend inordinate amounts of time on the internet.
yeah.
We do want people to connect with their local communities, and so for those who can only participate in Canis online because, say, they're not in a environment that's favorable to starting their own chapter, or they don't have the means to do so at the moment. Those people who want to aid Canis Society, but can't do so in an on the ground social or activist way, like the people who would be running the stream, so like myself and I assume Andrew, um, we are going to be sort of in a more academic vein. Like one of the main goals of Canis is to produce written content that gives, written and video content, of course, that provides a sort of intellectual framework or intellectual grounding for what we're doing. But for what the people on the ground in DC are doing, like that's the more important like aspect of Canis, and that's the direction that we want Canis to be able to go in the future. But for the time being, for the people that can't for the people that can't participate in that kind of on the ground community building, um, the online resources of the society will probably go more towards having intellectual producing intellectual content, basically.
Oh, okay. So I suppose that makes sense. Um, yeah, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, and I
Uh,
know that I know
is
that's complicated, but I think that makes the most sense. And of course, I'm by no means the definitive authority on this, but this seems to be the zeitgeist in the society's Discord server. That's when I talk to people. People who can't be involved in meat space where we eventually want to take the whole organization. People who can't be in meat space just yet are interested in working on the sort of intellectual background of the society, being able to make sure that the people on the ground have materials that they can draw from. So you can think of the Canis's online efforts as sort of like a supporting role.
So that'll be all right. So it's going to be much more like the going forward, like the Codex channels, where there's the book updates and T.S. Eliot and the occasional Bullbug articles and stuff like that, and less of the sort of the weekly updates on news and such.
Right, because I feel like
Yeah,
there are so many. Like I'll give you a good example, right?
too much competition, right?
Well, yeah, there's too much competition, but that's also not really what Canis is all about. I think people shouldn't expect. Well, I think for example, like just to use the obvious example, like Nick Fuentes does his own thing. That's sort of his shtick, and that's fine for him. But Canis, I don't mean to say that Canis is better than America First. Just that it's a different kind of thing. Um,
Yeah.
so.
Technically, I think he just got fried from YouTube, but
Well, he did just
we
get
won't
fried
go
from
into that.
YouTube, but I mean, of
But
course,
we won't go in. I get the point. We get the point. I think is we're going to try and take a sort of different route. I do agree that I think that this is the better route to go in. This is something that I think a lot of like you can tell me whether or not whether I don't know whether this relates to current events, but it seems like in the last 3 years since the Trump administration, right wing intellectual content has completely bottomed out. It seems like prior to 2016, the right wing was researching deep intellectual topics, at least comparatively for the time. It was going into the history of all these various philosophies. There was this critique of cultural issues, but not on the sort of faux level where it's just like, oh, look at the idiots on the other side. It seemed like it was a much more PowerPoint essay oriented um, intellectual position that since then has largely bottomed out into SJWs versus I don't know, Pakistanis online. So um, it's a long way of saying that I think that getting back to something a little bit more solidly based is actually a good idea.
I agree, and a lot of it is right under the Trump administration. Some people on the right have gotten fat and happy, and some people, uh, some people have stopped doing the hard work of thinking like thinking about
Well,
the.
it's
Go ahead.
I think I can pin it down. It was like back in 2016, the right was really thinking about it. We all kind of understand. Nothing's really changed in 3 years. We all understand what the issues are. We more or less understand what our positions are on those issues. The right or religiously oriented people or dissidents or whatever, however you want to define yourself, or if you're a progressive Catholic or whatever. Everybody kind of understood the issues, but it wasn't purely team sports. There was an understand. It seemed like what the right was headed towards, or what the online communities were headed towards, was a more nuanced understanding of politics. They were headed towards a more nuanced understanding of metaphysics and what it is to be human under the postmodern condition. And it seems like uh, we kind of, on the one hand, everybody complains about the outrage cycle, but then on the other hand, everybody's just, I don't know, it's like magnetic. It's like a warp hole. It just sucks everybody in. And it seems like it's devoured a lot of the former creators. And so the issue is that intellectually, the right is completely stonewalled. And I don't know if I want to go full reactionary theory here, but the idea is, the right wingers or right wing presidents like Trump and Reagan often serve the political interests of the cathedral by making it seem like there's a genuine opposition to progress, and then by extension moving the bar of that progress along for the right wing base, which would otherwise be against, say, things like gay marriage, which has just been completely embraced over the last 3 or 4 years. But the thing is that in the last 3 or 4 years, three years ago, in 2016, it seemed like we were on the cusp of sort of answering a lot of the questions about what it is, like I mentioned earlier, what it is to live under the postmodern conditions. And I don't know if it was Jordan Peterson, or if it was the outrage cycle, or if it was just the surprise victory. But a lot of those questions kind of got ejected because the feeling was that we were going to get real political concessions. And then when those didn't occur, the right wing was sort of left rudderless and essentially reduced to complaining in isolated corners on YouTube. And I mean, all that work is still there. All of that critique is still there. All those theories are still there. It's just nobody's really picked up the mantle yet.
No, I
Nobody's had,
agree. I agree.
and
And
nobody,
no, go ahead.
yeah. No. I was
Yeah,
ranting for too long.
no, that's fine. I think that's a very erudite, observation on the whole matter. I think that one of the biggest things we have to be aware of course, is that even if we have right wing presidents, I mean, even if we had, you know, even a real, even a president who was a true believer, so to speak, um, this we would still be faced with the problem of going forward in the next 30, 40, 50 years. How are we going to make sure that, for example, our children can grow up in communities that allow them to practice their faith, or allow them to have freedom of conscience? And we just don't have good answers for that yet. And this is something, I think this is a project that we need to be working on, because we we can't just sit around and wait for someone else to sort of fix the problem for us, especially when we're talking about our own posterity and their their future. Um, so that's my take on the whole matter. Is like, we have something really important at stake, which is the future of our particular kind of religious practice, the future of our particular cultural expressions. And, I think we need to be involved in creating a political framework and an intellectual framework that is resilient enough that we can, carve out a space for ourselves in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Well, I
Because
have I have my thoughts about what that's most likely going to be, but I might just be whistling Dixie. I'm not sure. I suspect, and I wanted to put this towards Canis because I know it's a Christian organization. Are we prepared to accept a framework that's not explicitly Christian? Because I just don't understand how we revive Christian ideals in a society that sort of post 1960s defines itself as innately explicitly post-Christian. Now, we can argue what post-Christian is. We can argue whether it's pagan or heathen morality. We can argue whether it's global homo or its own thing, or whether it's satanic or whether it's atheistic. We can argue about all of these sorts of moral inferences. But what we do know is that the moral cathedral guiding, if you want to call it Western civilization, is no longer under a Christian framework. And so I know most of the people here would probably prefer to have a Christian framework leading it, but are we prepared to accept um, political alliances or academic results that I guess I'm asking, is the goal to go back to a Christian framework, or is the goal to go forward through postmodernity towards something like metamodernism, or towards what is it, trad wave, or towards some sort of post-Christian new post-Christian new Christianity, or some sort of new philosophical understanding? I
Well,
know I'm certainly not trained to do that. I mean, I still have to be confirmed into the church, but um,
Well, and I think very few of us are in a position to do something like that because, very few of us are these sort of, 200 IQ, once in a 100-year kind of philosophers who can come up with that kind of framework. But at the same time, I would say that you are correct in the sense that I don't think there's any way where we're going to recover the previous Christian character of our societies. Now, does that mean necessarily that the future of our societies won't be Christian in some way? I don't think it necessarily does, but I do think it will be different than what it was before, um,
All
for good or
right.
for ill.
Well, yeah, I just there's a huge debate going on right now. One of the question in dissident right circles regarding quote unquote what happened to Ireland, and the thing that I see different creators, commentators, editors, writers noting is that and if I'm sorry if we've got any Irish in the chat, but it's the general feeling that Ireland was a very isolationist state, and it survived for a long time because of its character, but it sort of it cracked and fell apart to global homo because it was not able to orient itself. The right wing within the country from the Easter uprising onwards was not able to orient itself towards a positive vision of the future going forward, and the result was eventually it was overwhelmed by left-wing forces in the cathedral. Now, depending on what your political ideology is, maybe you think that they were secretly subverted, or international corporations or finance capital or whatever you want to define it. I think the thing that we can all agree is that it is no longer the nation that it once was, and that the right wing in that particular country seems kind of impotent. Now, I'm not trying to throw shade at Ireland or trying to point out. I'm simply trying to point out the political reality that um, that was a particular example of a staunchly Catholic country that did not orient itself positively towards the future in the view of most people who seem to be commenting on that particular country's history for the last 50 to 75 years. And as a result, what do you have? You've got legalization of abortion, the spread of pornography, all the rest of the stuff that we associate with global homo. And pretty soon, probably immigration issues, but that'll be a discussion I imagine for another time.
Right.
So I'm just making the point that I think if Canis is going to be an academic center, if it's going to be like a new hub or a new place, like the American mind, where we are thinking about, where we're trying to reorient the metrics by which the right wing thinks about metaphysics and religion and politics and culture. I think the first thing that we have to clear up is that we're not trying to reinvigorate a sort of a mythical past, if you will.
Correct.
We're not trying to go back. We the way I describe this to guys in another Discord server is, we're not about to, everybody in Canis doesn't have to go get baptized tomorrow and grab their swords because the Pope's about to declare the 10th Crusade. We got a long way to go before we get anywhere near that. Our situation is less of something like, something like the First Crusade, much more closer to the Spanish rebels fighting for their lives in the hinterlands of Covadongo. They still won that battle. They still established the kingdom of Asturias, but it was a long time. It was 800 years before Spain was actually liberated from the Moors. And I think that that's more or less the situation we ourselves find ourselves in. We have to be thinking, well, we have to be thinking realpolitik, but we also have to be thinking positively in terms of our orientation. We have to not be thinking that we're going to go on, that we're just one particular election or cycle away from achieving complete victory. Like the whole Stephen Turley deal, where if you read his books, you think that we're about to, the Christians are about to pour out of the churches with their crosses in hand and march on Washington with 1 million men. Just like, I don't think we're that close. I think we've got a long way to go before we get anything like that. So
I agree, and I agree with the characterization that Canis will be important for providing a positive view of us of right wing thought going forward into the future. And I don't know if it's going to be explicitly Christian or only implicitly Christian, but what I can say is that it will not be the same as what came before. And the reason I would say that is because I think we have a natural and strong aversion to. So I'm going to borrow a phrase from a gentleman in the Canis Discord who has the handle Despot Romanicus. He has this phrase he calls the Antiquarian Impulse, but this essentially applies to people who have this sort of idea of let's worship the ashes of the society that no longer is rather than trying to build something else. He characterizes as the antiquarian impulse. And so I think that's the kind of impulse that we want to avoid. And I don't think it is necessarily traditionalist or conservative, whatever label we want to slap on it, to be the kind of person who wants to return to an idyllic or a mythic past. I think it is important that we have just certain principles, certain goods that we want to safeguard going forward in the future, and that's really what divides us from progressives, is that we it's not that we just want to freeze time. It's that there are certain principles and goods that we want to ensure that society has for all time, that they don't value for reasons of either they have some sort of utilitarian ethic where they don't value these things, or they have some sort of other framework um, that puts them at odds with what is true, good, and beautiful.
agreed. I was just I know it might be a little bit um, uh, repetitive, but I just wanted to ensure that we're not going to be looking back with this particular organization. There are some people in the live chat that are asking about QAs and super chats. I was uh, did you want to handle any of those?
Yeah, what I was going to do is just go ahead and I'll take questions for at the end of the stream for about 15 minutes, and then I think I'll close it out. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before you went?
No, that pretty much covers it. As a social organization, our general plan is to keep meeting up on the ground. It's to keep the contacts and relationships that we have with people that we've met IRL going. Sort of establish a more communal circle of people that we can actually trust. And as far as the online stuff, The general debate is the general debate. I suspect is if this is truly going if this is going to be an academically oriented movement, which I think it needs to be because the right wing desperately needs that right now. It has to ask itself, what are the values we want to preserve? Can we sketch an outline of the kind of society we would prefer? And what is going to be the model that we use in order to sort of conceptualize political power? For example, reactionary politics versus progressive politics versus liberal politics. And can we come up with and this is the big one, can we come up with hard actions that people online can actually undertake to sort of begin enacting that vision? Because that's the big problem I've noticed that all of these conversations seem to have, is that we can spread the ideas, but we can't get the people listening to the ideas, even the ones that agree, to a particular place where they can live out those ideas in their own life, or whether they can connect to other people who share those ideas. This is something that Dave has talked about extensively as the main issue behind the Jordan Peterson phenomenon, which I don't think I have to go into here, but
Right.
that's about all I have.
All right.
So
Well, thanks for dropping in. It's always good to hear from people who are on the ground in one of our DC chapters, and I hope to hear from you more.
likewise.
Thank you. All right. Like I said, I'm going to take questions for the next 10 or 15 minutes. So we'll say 15 minutes. We'll close it out at 8 p.m. my time, 9 p.m. Eastern time. So let me go ahead and scroll on through the chat here. Um, let's see. Will Tim Norman Johnson says we're officially despot posting. Yes, yes we are. Um, let's see. Living Being asks, can Christendom effectively wield internet technology for good? I think it can. The internet, like any other sort of communications technology, like the printing press, is not necessarily good or bad. But um, there are some things about the internet I think that necessarily lend itself to not being particularly good for us. One of those, of course, is that you know, the internet is not like it used to be. A printing press, you can have your own printing press and print pamphlets, but when everything is done online, there's actually channels of control for online media, like, Google is a great example. Um, so, so yeah, I think internet technology can be wielded effectively for Christendom. But the question is, will we? Or that's a different question entirely. Is will it be able to be wielded effectively? All right. Let's see. So it would be good to have a semi-official stance from Canis on relations with secular nationalists and perennialists. Well, I mean, one does not have to be, this is also bearing out, one does not have to be a baptized Christian to be a member of the Canis Society. You merely have to be an ally of Christendom, meaning, of course, that you are okay with Christians practicing their faith in the traditional way that it has been practiced for the last 2,000 years. Uh, and you are willing to assist the Canis Society in its efforts to further those things in our society. So if you're a secular nationalist, a perennialist, I'm not exactly sure what's meant by that, like what kind of perennialism. But like I said, you do not have to be a baptized Christian to be in Canis. The next question from Junk Bucket. Are all the old videos deleted? Uh, all of the old streams, I think, have been taken down. and I'm not exactly sure why. You would have to talk to Dave about that, but I think it was just more along the lines of we wanted to take a different approach with the Canis Society live streams. So, that's all I have to say about that. Kai Makata, are there Canis sports? No, unless trying to get the memes past the admin is a sport. I don't think it counts. I skipped one, Joseph. I think this is a question. No, it's not a question. Um, oh yes, there. So Kai adds, as in physical group activities. I don't know what the physical chapters do. Of course, I live in Tennessee, and there are no Canis chapters in Tennessee, as far as I know, and I don't really have the prospect of starting one up anytime soon. But whatever the people in the physical chapters do for fun, I have no idea, and that's their own prerogative. If there was going to be a sport, it's probably not going to be dog racing. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I should have asked Politarch while he was here whether they ever go playing tennis or anything, but not to my knowledge. All right. Yes, I will point this out. What Living Being just said. Some of the old streams may become available again in an unlisted form. So they won't go away entirely, more likely than not. Joseph asks, you guys heard of Muscular Christianity, the sports and Christian movement in Victorian England? I have never heard muscular Christianity used in that way. I've always heard it used in some sense to mean Christians who aren't afraid of, espousing their beliefs in public or something like that. But sounds interesting. I believe that I concur with, I believe it was Plato who talked about the importance of being physically fit and doing physical activity um, when you are, um, like what am I trying to say? That physical activity and activity of the mind, like both of these, are good things that a well balanced man should have. Joseph asks, how much hope can we put in the Evangelical American right? Well, you should not sneeze at the Evangelical American right because, as I understand it, they are the only branch of Christianity in the United States that is holding its own in terms of membership. Now, as I understand it, just from a demographic standpoint, Pentecostalism is absolutely eating everyone's lunch. And so Pentecostals, I think, are technically considered evangelicals. Frankly, that doesn't instill me with a lot of confidence because I'm very wary of Pentecostalism and the whole idea of this sort of emotive kind of Christianity. But I by no means want to say that some people cast aspersions on Pentecostals and say that they are universally possessed by the devil and this and that, and I don't believe that's the case. But I am skeptical of some of their religious claims. All right, Will Tim Norman Johnson says, and he begins it with LARP question. So let me read through this real quick before I say it out loud. Okay, this is fine. He asks, can we devise a coded greeting or giveaway that we are part of Canis, something that other IRL members would notice but that a person may not have known who else was in their area? And so Living Being suggests a monocle. Um, Yeah, I don't think we should. Maybe we should come up with a secret handshake or some kind of passphrase. I don't know. I think the odds of running into a fellow Canis member just out and about is probably fairly low. So I don't know if that's quite necessary. But that is, as you say, a LARP question. Junk Bucket asks, "What are the tenets of Pentecostalism?" I don't know. I don't know exactly what the tenets of Pentecostalism are, but the idea behind Pentecostalism, as I understand it, is that they believe that people can be inspired with gifts of the Holy Spirit to essentially speak in not only tongues that are not their own, like other languages, which the universal church has always believed is a gift of the Holy Spirit. Not although who can possess it is different. Um, but Pentecostals believe not only that people, average church attendees, can have this gift of tongues, but they can also speak languages that are not human languages. Now, I want to caveat, I'm not an expert, and so I may be misrepresenting something about Pentecostalism, but I believe that is the case. And the thing about Pentecostalism is it's not only just Pentecostals that believe this necessarily. There is also a movement within the Catholic Church called the Charismatic movement, who also believe that people can be inspired with gift of tongues. Um, so there are many Christian denominations that have charismatic aspects to them. Um, I remember when I was younger, I went to I believe it was called an apostolic church, and they believed more or less similarly to Pentecostals, I think, and they believed in things like faith healing and that sort of thing. So it's interesting, but I'm by no means an expert, so I wouldn't press me. Um, let's see. I don't think Pentecostalism is derived from Billy Graham. I could be wrong, but I don't think that's the case. Um, which is something Kai Makata has suggested in the chat. About 5 more minutes, guys, and then I'm gonna go ahead and wrap things up. This has been a good little stream for it being a test stream, and I think we almost got up to 20 people, which again is very good for not not announced uh, testing stream. All right, Joseph asks, "Do you think either the Democratic or Republican Party will end up splitting after these almost surreal election cycles have passed, given they are both shaky coalitions and rising populism?" Um, I don't know. I think the odds of the Democratic Party splitting up are probably higher than the odds of the Republican Party splitting up. I don't think either really helps us because I think the way that American politics works is, in European countries that have parliamentary systems, you can have all of these little tiny parties, and they could sort of work together to form a government. But I think structurally, the United States is a different kind of democracy. So I think even if you did have parties break up, I think we would see a realignment that would just kind of give us more of the same. But again, by no means am I an expert in that sort of thing. Junk Bucket says, "Thank you for the stream." You're welcome. Uh, all right. Any other questions, guys? I do just want to say briefly that it is the goal of me and Andrew that we will have another stream up at starting at 6 Eastern Standard Time. So that's 5 p.m. Central Time. That's my time. Um, and I think the first stream is going to be about Strive and pornography addiction. I think that's what Andrew wanted to do, and I think he's going to take the reins on that one. But the plan is to have it 2 weeks from today. So if I'm not mistaken, that would be something like March 5th. I know you have to mark your calendars here. I've got my calendar right here, so it's not the 29th, but it would be March the March the 7th, I believe. Will Tim Norman Johnson says, "Is mayonnaise reactionary?" No, Will. Mayonnaise is not reactionary. Kai Makata asks, "How would college chapters be organized?" See, that's an interesting question. I think if we ever got to the point where we could have college chapters, or maybe that is something that we need to look into, because certainly college students have way more time to devote to social clubs than normal working stiffs. Um, so yeah, that would just have to be something I would look into. I don't know off the top of my head. All right, guys. I think I'm going to go ahead and close it down now. But thank you all for tuning in. And like I said, uh, we'll be back in 2 weeks. Thank you all, and God bless.